What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? AJ Good here at the House of Masks, where we unbox and review cool stuff almost every single day, and in today's video we have another top 5 list.
You just made the list!
So recently I did a top 5 Wes Borland's look video, and I really enjoyed how that came out. I really think that you guys enjoyed it, and I thought, why am I not applying this to Slipknot, the main draw of my channel? So starting today, we have a new series. This is my top 5 favorite masks from each member of the band, starting with Sid. Obviously, we are going to do this numerically, so we are starting with Sid, number 0, and I'm just going to run you guys through my top 5 favorite Sid masks. So, we are going to start with number 5 and work our way up to the top with number 1, and number 5 is the BCD. Yes, the classic. I think that when most people think of Sid Wilson, they immediately think of some sort of British civilian duty shot, whether it's the Wait and Bleed video or certain shots from the Spit It Out video. I think that when I think of Sid Wilson, I think of the British civilian duty gas mask, and I'm going to go out on a limb and say that most others do as well. That is literally Sid's logo, and he has it tattooed on his cheek. So, the BCD is the Sid mask. The BCD was also my introduction into mask collecting. That was my first legit mask. Pretty much got me started with everything that you see here on the House of Masks channel. I watched the Wait and Bleed video when I was a child, fell in love with Slipknot, called a family friend and asked if he had any masks laying around, and he just so happened to have the same exact gas mask that Sid was wearing in the Wait and Bleed video. So he brought it over to me, gave it to me, and I realized that these things were obtainable. The rest is history. So, number 5, just for nostalgia's sake, the British civilian duty. Alright, so, number 4, we have the black with white teeth Iowa skull. Now, I picked this one specifically because it just stands out to me. I can remember seeing this on the cover of Rolling Stone, and the weird face paint that Sid had on underneath the mask combined with the mask itself just really struck a nerve with me. In the best way possible, of course. So while all of Sid Wilson's Iowa skull masks are pretty cool in their own right, this one just has a more nostalgic and sentimental spot in my heart, and that's why it's on the list and none of the other copies. It's also why I separated each of those copies and didn't just say the Iowa Sid. He had multiple versions with different paint jobs, and he wore different face paints underneath each one of those, but for me it's definitely the Rolling Stone cover specifically, which would be the black Iowa skull with the white teeth painted on. And surprisingly or not, that is going to be the only non-gas mask on this list. I think probably a lot of people out there that watch my videos saw that coming. Moving on to number 3, we have the PDFD. Man, what a weird mask. Absolutely love this for the little amount that we got to see it. I really wish that we had seen more of this mask, but we got some decent shots of it, whether it be in the Welcome to Our Neighborhood DVD, some random interviews on YouTube, or the Spit It Out music video, which we barely see it in the elevator scene. This thing is just creepy. It was really experimental for Sid for it being used that early on in Slipknot. Most of the time he would just remove a filter and maybe have some straps added to his mask, but this one had all kinds of stuff done. He had aquarium tubing run throughout the mask was completely restrapped, and he even attached another piece of a gas mask to the bridge of the nose of the PDFD. All of these things combined gave that thing a super weird look, and let me tell you, those masks are not comfortable to wear at all, which is probably why we didn't see him use it that often. And Sid is an even bigger person than me, so I can imagine that that just wasn't a fun mask to wear at all, not to mention the breathability that I just thought about. Definitely not a lot of breathability in that like there would be with a BCD or a C3, which have these giant open holes right on the front of the face. But regardless, absolutely love that mask, and maybe not seeing it so much is part of the reason that I like it so much. Kinda holds up some sort of mystique with that mask. So, at number 3, we have the PDFD. That moves us right on into number 2, and this is going to be another Spit It Out mask. We have the Spit It Out Bathtub mask, or as it is less commonly known by its actual name, the AT Acron Tessalt La France Fireman's Respirator. Now, this is probably easily Sid's oldest gas mask, which, if I had to go out on a limb, is why we didn't see it used too often. We see it used in an old promotional shot that used to be used on a ton of old websites, and we see it in the bathtub scene of Spit It Out, and that is it. Now, it has been been seen since the Spit It Out music video in Sid's studio, but as far as usability, that's like an 100-year-old gas mask. I highly doubt that he wants to use that thing because it's probably falling apart every time he looks at it. With that being said, it's also probably not the easiest to wear and is probably riddled with asbestos because it is super old and the filter is still attached. Regardless, wow, what a creepy mask. I think the fact that this one looked so much different than any of the rest of the gas masks that he wore around that time really sets that one apart, and again, there is a mystique with the mask because we only saw it twice. And one of those times was a really unique sighting because there was no jumpsuit involved, there was actually some special effects, and it's literally for a split second in a music video for a really freaky scene. So, number 2, the Spit It Out bathtub scene mask. Obviously, I don't have a whole lot to say about it because there isn't a whole lot to say about it, but it is clearly one of my favorites, which is why it made it to second place. So, we just have first place left to go. But before we get into that, I'm gonna toss out 3 non-gas mask runner-ups. I feel like a lot of people watching this are gonna wonder why I didn't include stuff from other albums, and it's just because it's not my thing. The older BDSM style converted masks with zippers and spikes and face paint and leather straps, those were definitely my jam. I really appreciate those, and most of those come from the first 2 albums. So just to make it up for my people that are out there watching it that don't necessarily care for those masks and may prefer other masks from other albums, I will highlight some of my favorites from those other albums. Clearly, they didn't make it into my top 5, but that doesn't mean that they're not great masks. So, in no particular order, we have the We Are Not Your Kind weathered variant of the weird Sid Wilson animatronic mask. And what can you say? This thing's just creepy. It's a weird, uncanny valley version of Sid with some very strange movements, some busted up teeth, and it's just a freaky thing. I think it's weird. There are a lot of people out here that hate this concept, they hate the delivery, but I personally think that it's pretty creepy and a very Sid thing to do. Next up, we have the main Bob Bassett mask that he used for .5. Now, he obviously did have a few Bob Bassett masks for .5, but he had a main mask that he wore more than any of the other ones, which we just call the .5 Bob Bassett mask, because that is the main one that he wore. The other ones, like the skull or the horse mask, all have their own little individual nicknames because they weren't seen that often. Now, the reason that I like this mask so much is because it feels like a proper evolution to Sid's masks. Had he not gone with the skull aspect of the Iowa mask and stuck with more of a gas mask aspect without actually having a gas mask, I feel like we would have gotten something a lot closer to the Bob Bassett mask that he wore for .5. So that was pretty much the closest thing that we got to new gas mask style masks from Sid since Iowa. Now obviously I know that he wore like BCDs and stuff for Sonosphere and the memorial tours for Paul, but doesn't really count, still just a BCD. I'm talking new stuff. And last but not least on my list of runner-ups, we have the Face Rip to Volume 3 skull mask. It's gotta be the combo though. I don't really care for the skull mask on its own, and I don't really care for that static version of his death mask on its own, but when you see him rip that thing off at the end of Sick, it's something really cool to see. So, there are my runner-ups. Are you ready for my first place pick? This isn't gonna surprise a lot of you guys that have seen many of my videos on Sid because I mention it pretty much anytime it's brought up, and that is my number 1 all-time favorite Sid Wilson mask has gotta be the C3. Now, I'm going to quickly list my reasons because, again, if you've seen my videos that have anything to do with Sid Wilson gas masks, I've probably already mentioned these, and I don't want to waste too much of your time. Not only was this mask used for 2 different album cycles, but it was the best 2 album cycles, self-titled and Iowa. Doesn't get cooler than that, right? The strap job on this mask was way different than any of the other strap jobs that we got to see on any of the self-titled or Iowa masks. Something about this style of strapping just really stands out amongst the others. It is a very reminiscent mask of the BCD. It definitely resembles the BCD, but it's slightly different. The biggest difference between Sid wearing the BCD and the C3 has to be the fact that he started playing with his face paints underneath the C3. We got to see a lot of cool face paints under the C3, and we really only got to see black under the BCD for the most part until the C3 came into the picture and he started switching between the BCD and the C3. I still think we got cooler face paints out of the C3 though, and the C3 pretty much kicked off his different color face paint and different design face paint phase. And last but not least, this was his main mask for the Tattoo the Earth and World Domination Tour, which is my all-time favorite era of Slipknot. They were just so angry and so hungry, and it was like the perfect combination of Iowa and Slipknot mushed together. So for all of these reasons and more, or maybe not more, maybe I could just go off of those reasons and go way more in depth than I did. But regardless, for all of these reasons, the C3 is most certainly my all-time favorite Sid mask. What about you? Let me know down in the comments below what your all-time favorite Sid Wilson mask is. Drop a like on this video if you appreciate this kind of content, and that's gonna do it for me here at the House of Masks. So until next time, this has been AJ Good telling you to say no to drugs and alcohol, and yes to Sid masks, and we'll see you guys in the next one.